Ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving on to the next very interesting topic, good health and microbiome. Please give it up for Bart Van Hooland, Managing Partner at Thia Ventures, Adamek, Chief Impact Officer EIT Food, Sandra Wingaard Thrane, co-founder and CSO Bactolife. I'm so sorry, the spelling was bad. I'm so sorry. Thrane? Was it better? Tran, okay. Sorry for that. And panel discussion moderator, Siako Van Kol, co-founder and co-host Tomorrow's Bite. Please give them a warm welcome.
So, welcome all to this interesting panel. Before I start, I want to ask you one question. Who thinks here in the audience that food should not be a problem but a solution? Raise your hands if you think so. Well, that's a lot, right? And nowadays, actually, food is more a problem than a solution. It's a problem on health, on sustainability, and it's even separating humans from each other. It's one of the factors leading to a more polarized world. And because of that, I started together with Andres a podcast where we face different perspectives within food and give it a common ground to listen to them, because that's what we not do. But we have to solve these problems. And in order to do that, we only have to collaborate. But today, I will have the session together with three fantastic panelists next to me. They were already had a short introduction, but I think they can do it then better themselves. So I give it up to you. How would you describe yourself? Sanna, you can go.
Yeah, so my name is Sandra Wingaard Thrane, and yeah, I'm a co-founder of a scale-up in Copenhagen, Bactolife, where we're working on a new category of functional food ingredients binding proteins. I'll describe myself as a scientist first and foremost, an engineer, and a microbiologist, and a big enthusiast in the whole space of microbes and how they are our best friends and how we need to make sure that we play nice with them. And that's really what we're working on also in Bactolife, making sure that we can feed ourselves, maintain our health, and have a really good point of just living a full, great life.
Yeah, beautiful. And Adam.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. First of all, I wanted to apologize for my voice. Just got a little bit sick, so I think my microbiome doesn't work very well. Well, I'm Adam. I'm a Chief Impact Officer for EIT Food, helping others to innovate. My entire professional career was around innovation, so from scientific background to actually commercial launches of the products on the market. I'm doing what some people are calling translations. So I'm a translator, not a Google translator, but just translator, translating scientific achievements into commercial applications, and all of these are for our better health. So this is what I'm doing.
Thanks. Is this now infected? I'm Bart Van Hooland, Belgian by nature. Living between Belgium and France, and I'm the investor here, yeah. Thia Ventures, early stage investing. Before Thia, I actually had started and run a fund, Droya, in early stage oncology, and that's where I got hooked on biotech. Not a scientist, but hooked on it, that's even worse. Started Thia during COVID, so left the cancer fund to the other partners, because I thought that it could be extremely interesting now that we see all of these technologies from life science going over into the food space, and that food is important for health. We'll talk about it today, to invest in that new emerging space. So with Thia, we invest at the intersection of food, biotechnology, and health, and hopefully can give a little bit of a perspective on this phenomenal and very difficult space.
Yeah, good introductions. I start with a nice question, like, why is the gut microbiome so important?
You guys know.
I think it's important because it's an integrated part of us. Like in science, I like the term the holobiont, that we're not just the sum of our own cells, we're the sum of the cells of the microbes, of everything that's on us. It's an integrated part of our immune system, it's an integrated part of our digestion. So therefore, it's important because suddenly we understand that we're not just our own cells, we're the combination of everything that's in us, and we need to take that into account in how we act and how we develop products and how we live our life.
You can add, Vern.
And I think it's kind of microcosmos, so we cannot imagine this microbiome, that's why it's microbiome, because it's biologically active, sitting or residing in our intestines. And I don't know who is the boss, actually. Because if we just count the cells of our human body, and the number of the cells of the bacteria, you remember they are just one cell. It seems that they are 10 times more than our cells. So that's why I'm asking who is the boss. Actually, we have two genomes. We have our genome and theirs genome. And they could steal the genes and they could adapt our health. So this is the beauty, and this is kind of something which drove me to innovation in this part.
Yeah. And to go on this, like, how does a healthy microbiome looks like?
That's a good one. I didn't see it. I mean, I know what we can suffer from if we don't have the good microbiome, because it contributes actually healthy or good microbiome can contribute to overall well-being and health. When we don't have the right combination of those bacteria which live in our gut, it means that we can develop several diseases like diabetes, depression. No, I'm not joking. There are plenty of others which are really stimulating our immunological system or affecting our immunological system. We can develop several diseases which are called autoimmunological diseases. So it's not really easy. We need to be friends with our bacteria because otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think building on that, one of the few things we kind of know now about a good microbiota or a healthy gut microbiota is that it's diverse. We need a lot of diversity. But other than that, it's very difficult to say because it can be combined in a lot of different ways and be good. But we need a lot of microbes. I think that's a really key point that is definitely clear today.
Yeah, and you have a company within this space, Bactolife. How did you set up such a company? And how does it enhance then, in that sense, gut health?
So Bactolife was founded back in 2017, and we were actually people from different angles of the Danish, both research community and then the biotech industrial scene. So we have a lot of really cool companies in Denmark. We're a bit of a hub for like these fermentation-based companies. Novozymes, Christian Hansen also working on a lot of probiotics. And we were some people that talked together about how can we take some of the new knowledge on antibody technologies, protein technologies that are super specific that you can use to actually go in and precision target harmful toxins, harmful metabolites, and use that, leverage that for gut health. So kind of like, as we just talked about, what's a good microbiota? It's diverse, it's a lot of things, but another side of that coin is what's bad. And there's a lot of pathogens that we're all exposed to on a daily basis, more or less. Some of us has tried to have traveler's diarrhea. Some has maybe known somebody who's actually been in the hospital with infections. And then if you look to the low and middle income countries, the developing parts of the world, their infant diarrheal diseases are still so impactful that it's a really major contributor to mortality rates and morbidity. And then actually saying, how can we tackle that? And that was the starting point of Bactolife, of trying to bring something new, something accessible, that can really fortify your health against some of these challenges.
And how do you make sure that you only tackle the harmful ones?
I think that's the beauty, both of the technology, it's super specific, but of course also of targeting these pathogens that are always bad. They're categorically bad. They'll also come in, they'll outcompete the good microbiota, they'll produce toxins that create inflammation. And inflammation in your gut is never something that you want. Even if it's just a little bit or if it's a lot, it's not comfortable, it's what gives us discomfort, it's what you feel as a lot of pain and irritation, and blocking that will always be beneficial.
Great. And Adam, you're an expert in creating consumer market, products that fits in the demands. Within this space, so we create products that are beneficial for the gut. What kind of strategies or what kind of factors do you think are important to take into account to make it a success?
So I will still come back to what Sandra was saying, just for 1 second, really. So if we think about our microbiome, it's like fingerprint. It's unique for everyone. And it's never the same in other individuals. So it's very important. And now, taking this into the question you've asked, is like, okay, if we produce products which are really based on the needs of populations, we will never kind of precisely target the right consumers. We will always offer something which is nice, supportive, but it's not personalized, all right? So we always are having this kind of, forgive me my French, schizophrenia, really, between developing the product which is individually targeted or for masses, so for everyone. And then we come back, because innovation is actually crazy a little bit. Why? Is because with probiotics, with microbiome, with all of the science around that, the knowledge is very old. And when I'm saying old, it doesn't mean outdated. No, we have first scientific results which are dated like many hundreds of years ago, which contributed to success of the products being now on the market. Just imagine probiotic yogurts. Probiotic yogurts were naturally, so probiotics in yogurts were naturally always occurring in these fermented milk products. And I don't want to go back to the times of Mongols, Genghis Khan, and the guys who were just going through different lands with the milk in the special containers, which was fermented because the temperature was high. So nowadays we have completely different products, right? They are tasty, they are sweet, they are equipped with some probiotic strains, which are having beneficial effects for human body. But also, we have, from the other hand, we have also products which are really much targeted at the right consumers, like infants, elderly people. We know what is missing in these special groups. We could really focus on those groups, consumers, to help them.
Okay, and Bart, as an investor, what kind of, how do you look at the gut health market? What kind of intersections do you think are most promising? Is it related to food, health, or biotech in a sense?
Well, it's all three. But I think what you guys just said is sort of the basis of what, as an investor, we have to try to achieve. Because we know, I think we can start from the axiom with the data that are there, that the gut microbiome is important for our health. We don't really know yet completely how. It is extremely complicated, and complex, and we don't have all the data yet to understand it fully. So how do you then start working on it? How do you start investing in it? And it's a little bit like Adam said. I think the first aspect that we do is say, okay, what are still the common denominators that where we think there is a good probability based on the data, on the literature, that we can contribute to it, to the gut health in a more generic way. And so things like, we still see a fiber gap in a lot of places, overall, anywhere really. Again, we know that fiber is good for the gut health. So there's a lot of assumptions here. But if we don't go on assumptions, I mean, as an investor, we have to think about return in a given time. I think we will probably not have mastered the microbiome and understood the microbiome in less than a couple of decades, unless AI really pushes this. So in the meantime, what do? Do we wait for the data? No, we don't. We say, okay, fiber gap. What are the ways that we can increase or help to increase fiber in food? Useful, functional fiber in a way that can be formulated in foods that many people take up, and in a way that is also affordable, which are the constraints for food. And that's, that for us gives a framework for general investments. Doesn't mean that we have to, just accept that we'll only do the common denominators. But for everything else, for the more personalized approach, we need better markers still. We need better ways of measuring. We also need then personalized components, and we can come back to that. So one of the things that we've done there is, because we don't see enough clinical data to give us comfort in many of the personalized approaches, is we've invested in a company doing clinical trials in a way that food can actually afford it. So as an investor, basically we say we have a certain time horizon, we have a phenomenal space, we've only, for me, scratched the surface. What are the like heuristics or sort of frameworks we can adopt today to make what we think are investments towards that ultimate goal? I could go on, but
well, there's a good point that you make there, and interesting. Like, Sandra, you created a company in this space, and I think some of the audience are in this moment as well, maybe working in a company that is focused on the microbiome, creating products for that. What is like one piece of advice that you would like to give them that you would maybe like to hear in the beginning?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I think that there's a lot of advice I could give myself, but I think one of them is, of course, to stay true to your idea. And I think actually in the process also of finding investors, being really good at both sticking to your guns and finding the ones that buy into what it is that you want to do, that you kind of really have good expectation management, because the investors that you take in will be completely essential to the rest of your journey. They'll be your partners, both when it goes well and when it doesn't. And it's really about making sure that you kind of have the right plan and that everybody agrees to that plan, because there's a lot of risk in starting things from scratch, and that's really the fun part. So I think that's also another piece of advice, is to try to relish that feeling of uncertainty, because it's. I once read that some researchers at Harvard Business School had seen that if you get really anxious, that reaction is actually the same as physiologically as when you get excited. So if you feel anxiety and you just say out loud, "I'm excited," then your body can kind of actually feel like, I'm excited now. and in that way, you need to relish that, the anxiety and the excitement of doing something new. But then, of course, finding good people to work with that can support you, because you need that, especially in the beginning when you're a 1 or 2 person army. You need that support, and then as you grow and scale, you even more so need that network if you are to succeed and go all the way.
Very good. Yeah, and Bart, I want to ask you the same question. Like, what kind of advice would you have to startups that approach you and for like an investor partnership?
The usual. I mean, that has nothing to do with the gut microbiome, of course. I mean, it's although you want to have a healthy gut microbiome the day of the meeting. That would probably be the link, but it's. Be clear, and I mentioned that before. Be clear on really the strengths that you have. People often ask, so how long is the list of things that we should be ticking off? Don't do the list, because then you're probably going to have moi on all of it. For us, the 2 things that are important, obviously the team, the people. If there's no click, let's just agree to disagree and leave each other. And that doesn't mean that you're bad or whatever, but it's just, there has to be a fit. And then the second, in our case, is the science. If there's no differentiating, protectable, clear scientific advantage over anybody else, then it's probably me too. And again, maybe with a good brand, you'll get there. And maybe we should talk about branding because of the fact that that the microbiome science is still so fuzzy and young. We as investors who like science have to accept that probably in this space, having a good brand, a good name, a good marketing is a bit more important than if we do some other things where you can just say, clearly this is our advantage. But then, so if you have those two bases, great. And then there's, what else is really special about you? So people say, oh, how much traction do we need? How much IP do we need? How much proof of concept do we need? It's different. We've invested in companies that have zero commercial or partnership tractions. We've invested in companies that have only got commercial. I mean, take the things where you think you've got something solid, and then sell that, and then we'll see if that's enough for us to take that as a stepping stone and take the rest of the risk. And in gut microbiome, well, I'll stay generic because I'm not sure I can adapt that straight away to this topic.
Well, you give a lot of advices here. I just asked you one, but I am very useful as well. Adam, you worked in both, like corporate, and you have also seen the startup scene. Like, what kind of challenges do you see that companies face when scaling like these products that are targeting our gut?
Yeah. So actually my professional experience, I started to count more than 25 years. In different branches, and I started with academic research. So I was always this scientific or researcher in the gut side, all right? The first person who will accept the product or will not accept, who is willing to pay or who will not pay, is consumer. So I mean, you develop the product for someone to adopt it and then accept it and buy it. And would be great if the purchase act is repeated. So this is something which you need to consider when you develop the product. What is the problem you solve with your product? What is the ultimate goal you have in order to be successful on the market when it comes to consumer? And it might be that consumer in certain market will accept it while the other consumers in the other market will not accept it because of the cultural differences in consuming. We are still food. Right? And you came to Warsaw, you try Polish food, right? Polish cuisine. And it's much different from French cuisine and from the Nordic cuisine. And all of this bacteria or whatsoever is different. Processes to prepare food. The same as with the consumers. I mean, they might react positively for the very general products and they will accept it easily. For very niche product, it might be very difficult. So what I'm always advising, and I was working on both sides, so corporates and startup world, and they both need to answer the question. I mean, what is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the pain you want to cover and to bring the product, so uniqueness of the product?
Okay, yeah, fair points. But now we know about what kind of strategy we can put in place as a business, what kind of challenges we face. But also one thing to take into consideration is the place where you start building your business, right? And as an investor, Bart, you have seen a global landscape. What in your opinion seems most promising to start a business, and what kind of, let's say, place around the world would you consider to be the most promising to start a business within this space?
Simplified, 2 steps. One is where do you develop it, where do you get your technology, your science, and there could be anywhere. And I think Europe is fantastic for that. We work a lot with the Belgian ecosystem and the other ones, the VIB and stuff like that. And we invested in Denmark, super. And then the next step, where do you build the business? And then you come more into the regulatory space. And I think all of our European companies look at the US and Asia first for their startups, their proof of concept, their first commercialization. Of course, it depends. If you do ingredients, I mean, a lot of really good ingredient companies are in Europe, they'll probably take it first to those other continents. So you have to look at the whole world, and I think if you start with your business more than the needs, I think it's the barriers, and a lot of those are regulatory, and if we are world champion in Europe in one thing, it's probably on that front, unfortunately.
And how do you help like startups within the space in the EU regulatory?
How do we help them?
Yeah. Okay.
Don't overestimate investors. No, but I think really by challenging them on the choices that they make. But you know, savvy entrepreneurs know themselves, and it's not a secret where you can go. I mean, there are loopholes, there are ways you can go faster. So it's worth investing time and knowledge into seeing what you can really do continent by continent and region by region. But obviously everybody, also the investors in your next round or the people that are going to buy you, like to see business. And so you do that in the areas where you come closest to that. And you keep a global perspective.
Yeah. Talking about the EU regulatory challenges, Sandra, you put scientific approach in place. What kind of scientific approaches do you put in place? Like what kind of researches?
In relation to
The EU regulator.
Oh, I think that we are, of course, just compiling all of the data that we need for in our case, a novel food approval for our proteins. And I think the good news is that there, even though it's faster in some other areas, it's a lot of the same type of data that you need to show. You need to show safety, of course, for the consumer. So of course, we're just making sure that we tick all the boxes on our research and on our characterization of our final ingredient, so that we can kind of go into that. And then, of course, we do a lot of work with consultants, with others, to try to think ahead, because especially in the EU, it's known that during this process of approval, they might come back with a lot of questions. And then you prepare as well as you can, try to come up with what could we be asked about, trying to be proactive. But in the end, you just also have to kind of just give yourself to the process. And then in the meantime, you can launch in other areas, have a lot of learnings there that you then hopefully can implement once you have your EU approval, right? So it's also thinking about it as I think a tiered approach to then get the global coverage that you, of course, always want when you're developing food ingredients.
Good. Adam, we talked a lot here about the gut microbiome, but we were talking about before, we have way more other microbiomes around us. What do we know about the relationships between these microbiomes, and how does what do we know about the relationships between these microbiomes? Just keep it on that.
If we talk about relationships bacteria build in ourselves, then I cannot say anything because it's their private stuff. But when we talk about what is the relationship between the bacteria and the quality of our microbiome and benefits for health, or the risks for health, from the other hand, when we miss that, then it's probably a huge stage for the discussion. We know that, bacteria themselves are just bacteria, okay? They are microorganisms, one-cell microorganisms. They live in our gut. They want to survive, so they need food. They communicate with themselves, so it's just life in our intestines. First, they need food in order to be healthy. So what we eat goes to them as well. If we don't consume enough fiber, they are hungry. If we consume too much coffee or alcohol, they are getting crazy. If we consume too much protein, it's maybe very hard to digest, so they cannot work. So all of this is really affecting our microbiome, and then if our microbiome doesn't work very well, then we suffer. So it's really, I would say, this kind of love-hate relationship we have with our microbiome. But just to tell you, fun facts. Bacteria needs fiber. We call it prebiotics. Without this fiber, bacteria will not survive in our gut. What bacteria does is they communicate with themselves. They produce several substances, it's like almost everyone uses WhatsApp, right? So you message your friend, I'm going to be in the Food Tech Congress in Warsaw, are you coming? All right? So somebody else knows. So they also inform themselves. So bacteria to bacteria, sending some substance which is bacteriocin, like an SMS or WhatsApp message, hey, the fiber is coming, there will be a party, or wine is coming, I better hide somewhere, all right? I'm always presenting this in a funny way because this is how it works really. I mean, of course it's more complicated, more sophisticated. They are sending these signals so they cooperate with each other. So it's a bunch of partnering bacteria in our gut who cooperate for our good. And then those substances which they produced, we call it postbiotics. So you have 3 new terms: prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic, because it's a very interesting from technological standpoint and scientific point of view, is that all of these substances which are produced by bacteria can be used to heal ourselves. So butyric acid is one of these. It's the factor which is completely rejuvenating our intestines. There are some others, like natural antibiotics killing bad bacteria. They are helping us. Vitamins, B12, it's produced by bacteria. Then tryptophan and serotonin, which is improving our mood and contribute to a better mental well-being. So it's our bacteria. So we better cooperate.
Yeah, indeed, we better cooperate. Adam, as well, we were talking before with the 4 of us some weeks ago, and we talked about alternative ingredients or like new upcoming ingredients, including but actually a good potential, including proteins with sweet properties, right? How do you see the future of these like novel ingredients?
And this is a very good question, because what we do in EIT Food is really promoting the innovation space, in Europe mostly, but now everywhere actually, but predominantly in Europe. So what we see actually, the type of research which are ongoing on sweet proteins actually, is super promising. We know that we consume too much sugars in any form. And then when I'm saying sugar, doesn't mean that it's just what we know as sugar, as sucrose, so the white sugar. It's also carbohydrates, which are having, simple carbohydrates, which are having probably bad influence on our health. Sweet proteins is the new ingredient which is coming from the fruits actually, but it can be synthesized in the form of, in the bioreactor, so really through the precision fermentation, which has the form of protein, but it stays sweet. So we don't need to use artificial sweeteners like aspartame, like acesulfame K, like sucralose, many others, all right? Or erythritol, xylitol, if you know. And we could potentially use sweet proteins to replace sugar in our diet. And one of the things which really links our health and gut health is actually too much sugar in our diets, which is killing our gut bacteria. Sugar is really not helpful, so it's not a friend. Okay? So there are plenty of novel ingredients which we see could be really obtained through new processes like precision fermentation, could help us to really improve our health. So I'm looking forward to all of these innovations. We still cannot launch probably on the European market these novel foods because of the regulatory landscape, but I hope soon, and this is what we do in EIT Food, is really promoting that and helping this regulatory landscape. You wanted to add something?
Just a quick add-on. One of the fascinating things that I lived through in the last year was that one of our portfolio companies, just as a proof of concept, made a drink with just a mix of amino acids. They didn't even bother going for protein. They just mixed amino acids in a certain composition, and we had a sweet drink. And the sweeter they made it, the more protein you got in. So I think it's a very promising thing. I think it's probably more accessible than we think. You probably don't need extremely sophisticated compositions or protein construction. But that's the type of thing that it could probably help us sooner rather than later.
And I have another question for Bart, so you can keep the microphone.
That'll teach
Going
me.
on the future, is like, what kind of innovations do you think that seems more promising, as you have seen already a lot globally?
Well, there's a lot right now. As I said, the big challenge is the complexity, and so finding your way within a certain time frame for innovations here. Adam mentioned the specialty markets. I think a lot of the innovations will continue to go through the specialty markets: infant, elderly, diseased, medical nutrition, even pet food. I mean, we love to talk about health, and then we go to McDonald's. But for the kids and for the dogs, we actually spend money on health, and it's good. I mean, we'd better do it for ourselves as well. But so we look a lot at those specialty markets to see what is happening there. I would also, maybe another tip for people, for startups, probably focus on one of those markets, because it could well be that you'll get a proof of concept and also market adoption and also interest from investors on these, because people see that there is more willingness to pay and willingness to consider these products there. It's a bit the Formula One of food, these things. Let it develop in those smaller markets, and then maybe eventually it'll get over to the generic and to the general markets. We're looking right now at HMOs. There is clearly already some adoption in Europe and US. China is starting now. In infant, adult, we might, people expect benefits, expect this to enter supplements even more, but it's going to take time. And if you would just focus on those, you'd be bankrupt before you ever get there. And I'm digressing. I see. But just quickly then on other aspects. So there's sometimes there are also cliches and revolutions that actually they're cliches and revolutions because they're true. So obviously, I mean, there wouldn't be a session without mentioning GLP-1 and Wegovy. I think it shows that sometimes things do come together, and there is, it has focused our attention on an aspect of the gut that maybe we can do more with ingredients, existing or new ones. And then finally, the other buzzword that I have to mention is AI. It's bloody difficult, it's bloody fascinating, but if there is one space in our body, well, there's several, but biology, by definition, because of the complexity, because of the interaction, because of the impossibility for us to grasp it, is a space where normally with AI we should find ways forward faster than we have until now. So those are the things that we also considering.
And so a lot of opportunities within this space, right? Like you mentioned a lot. The thing is coming, yeah. The thing that's coming to make this all a success, there needs to be also the responsibility taken by the industry. We don't want to get products on the market that are assumed to be healthy because of the added probiotics, but the actual overall product seems to be unhealthy, right? What kind of steps can we take into place to cover this, that this will not be happening? And you?
I'm not sure I catched your question, really. So what steps would we
So as the industry take to take the responsibility that we put healthy products on the market?
Yeah, that's a very good one and very important one. I think we should ask ourselves what we are aiming for. Is it only for profit? Or is it also for impact? And impact measured in a way that it changes human lives for better. And humans' lives for better doesn't mean longer. What I think is better longer. So you feel better when you live longer, and not living longer just for the sake of age of 100 years, but really feeling good at the same time. So which steps we should take to answer your question? I think the important ones, I mean, it should be our responsibility as producers, as food producers, like focusing on consumer, not only as a buying power, but as a person who is buying and feeding the entire family, themselves and their families, and give the product. So it should be also designed in a way that it is beneficial. Doesn't need to be super beneficial properties like my hair will start magically grow again, but I needed to stop losing my health, for example, okay? So something which is just contributing to my well-being. And I don't know which steps we should take, but I think it's a common responsibility of food producers, ourselves, also consumers who are making choices. We can buy something else maybe if this is valuable. But I'm not sure if we can afford it, all right? Because better options might be more expensive. So it's a complex one, and I don't feel like I can answer in giving simple prescription or recipe that if we all decide here today that we start producing, if there are representatives of food production companies, that we start to produce now healthy products, we will be living in a better world tomorrow. I don't think so. So what we need to do is really at least have a commitment to myself. So when I design products, or when I used to design product in my past, I was always looking at the not harming consumers.
Thanks for sharing. I hope that the audience takes it with them. Do you want
and
to
I
add
think
on this?
Yeah, exactly. I think that to that point, it's also a matter of course, the companies trying to develop these new ingredients to the extent that we then also have investors with a longer time perspective that also supports us in being more independent and not just being bought up, because then we can also have more power about how our ingredients are being put out there. So in that way, also trying to maintain, again, and that has to be sometimes maybe compromised with profit, and that's a difficult one, but balancing that. And there, I think, at least in our perspective, we've been fortunate to also have some really great impact investments, and there, having more of that, having more people with a conscience can hopefully help a lot. But in the end, it's also a matter of the big, of course, global food players that need to take responsibility for the products that they put out there. And if they then choose to add in vitamin C to something that's otherwise not a good product, to be able to write that it's immunity boosted, that's just a difficult thing to tackle, where it's also a matter of, hopefully, I hope, also as this whole thing about the microbiota, how important it is for our health, if we can get that more out to the consumers, then they can make the buying decision that can help affect the behavior of the big company, because in the end, they sell what the consumer buys, right?
Profit is not a compromise. It's the only thing I wanted to add.
You just want profit, that's fine, that's fine.
No, it's just, I mean, but this is old hat, so let's not go into these discussions that come. It's just part of what we need to make progress. And if we take baby steps, I mentioned marketing. I mean, nutraceutical supplements, typically a domain that is quite often concerned about gut microbiome. Of course, there's a lot of crap in there, a lot of things that are just a nice color and a nice shape of pill, but that's what people buy. So if you want to improve gut microbiome through supplements, you will have to be able to sell your better supplement through the noise, accept that, and get through it in a way that creates profit. If not, the other guys win.
Before we give the audience a chance to ask a question, is there something you want to mention that we actually didn't discuss?
Maybe I would conclude with one sentence, a quote actually, from Hippocrates. And this is funny because it just came to my mind that I was always laughing from Hippocrates, who was saying, "You are what you eat." Well, I would add also, "You are what you eat and what you drink." But it's actually true, because we become what we eat because of the guys inside us and ourselves overall. So I don't want to make such statements at the end, maybe, but I would say two things. Let's take care of what we eat, really, and make better choices. let's not make the food religion. So really focusing on food like it was the everything in the world. Let's have some pleasure as well. Let's have some bad choices sometimes. And bad choices doesn't mean that you should do them every day, but if you do it from time to time, it's probably not going to kill you. But what I'm trying to say is if you try and you see it doesn't work for you, you shouldn't probably consume it any longer.
Thanks for the ending. And we have to finish it up because I think we still have time for one question, right? So the audience, there's one in the back. Do we have a microphone for that?
Thank you. Emilien Rouy from Arla Food, so one of those big companies. But it's a very interesting perspective that you have because we are actually making food that are healthy and tasty and including live bacteria that are good for the microbiome. One of the big issues we have, how do we talk about such a complex topic to our consumers and make them understand the value of fermented dairy products with live bacteria, added fiber? And if we look into the really long term, how would you recommend us, so the big companies that are providing the end product to the consumers, to collaborate with startups? So which type of startups, how should we approach them? What should we have in mind so that we have the best collaboration possible?
So how many questions was that? To be brief, I think on the consumer, don't overestimate the consumer. I mean, we shouldn't underestimate him, but people go on very flimsy information and very fast. So accept that, I think, and make sure that you get those messages in a very succinct way. I mean, most people, a lot of people understand now that fiber is important, that we need more fiber. So, people will buy things where it says fiber inside. If you try to be more complex and complicated than that, you probably won't reach a lot. I think the most important thing is probably to make sure that you got your product, that your fiber or your good ingredients in the right products. There's this trend now that people want to drink everything that's functional, including fiber, and there's ways now to do that. Well, then make sure that your fiber is in drinks and in the drinks that young people like and that are, well, if you want to create health messages, then again, I would probably start in the niche markets and where people do read all of that and create a positive feeling or a positive information flow on your ingredient there, so that people in generic say, oh, well, HMOs, 2FL, I've heard about it in infant formula. Oh, I can have that as well now. Probably it's not bad if the babies eat it. So it's simplistic, but I think that's the way to do it. And with startups, well, go wide enough because nobody has the truth today. So have an approach, open-minded and broad. Work with several people and see who emerges. You can't pre-select.
No, and I think building on that, I've talked to a lot of people in companies like yours about working together, and I think there are some key points. One of them is try to be a bit fast. You guys are so slow. And the other thing is that live with some risk, man. Like, savor it, because I think you often meet this wall coming as a startup working with the big companies that you want to have complete certainty on all aspects of everything. And if you want to do something actually new, that's not going to happen. So be ready for that, and then you'll be able to do something new and exciting, and that can actually differentiate you later down the line. So that way of being able to dare a bit more is really, I think, totally key. And that's the key for this entire field. As you say, you say that it's these niche markets, and they're huge, each of them. But it's like we only want the ingredients that are one size fits none. And daring to say this is a really significant market opportunity. It's not like what we're used to working with, but we'll go there to try something new. I think that's completely key.